Good morning. Happy New Year, everyone. Committee on with the realities that we are in the typhoon belt and our GOs who made amendment. These it was element in a initial conclusion is that many of the that were filed are actually covered by are actually written begin. Bill number 2448 by Senator Gingona, Senate Bill number 2487 by Senator Marcos, Senate Bill number 2502 by Senator Legarda, and PS Resolution number 1025 by Senator on the Philippine Disaster Risk Reduction. I was just clarifying, mentioned earlier has or another, either by way of amendment, letters that we have written agencies urging them to adopt certain policies. I was just confirming with my staff. A few years back, my chief of staff clarified that the Council Breastfeeding, it is an advocacy that I have been. I just wanted to put that on all these general terms. So it's up to you, DSW, only because I do know you work hand in hand, no? So I think yes, ladies first, we can go with DSWD, but correct. So anyway, it doesn't yourselves.
For us to Thank you very much, Your Honor. As I was saying, if Your Honor would allow me to just make mention or read some of just the portions of the position paper which we were supposed to submit to the Senate. And this is the position paper of the Office of Civil Defense relative to Senate bills numbers 2466, 2446, 2448, 2487, and 2502. And then Comprehensive Emergency Program for Children as a Section 3 Reduction Management Plan. Mandatory training to conduct regular exercise, to conduct regular drills and exercise assessments identified. And structures should be ensured at all times. Hence, national standards should be consolidated and should ecological incapacity. Mechanism for immediate reunion of disputes made at the national level and by capacity to withstand the increasing magnitude of disasters. Doing so would lessen the impact of the disaster to the communities and children, and for a long by capacity to withstand the increasing magnitude of disasters. Doing so would lessen the impact of the disaster to the communities and children, and for a long every endeavor towards this work hand in hand to achieve community resilience, which we will be submitting to the appropriate committee, risk reduction and management, and eventually to focus on the sectors of the with disabilities and the children relative to the disaster risk reduction and management, and eventually to focus on the sectors of the with disabilities and the children assessment, warning system or signal number 1 of risk and impacts on the specific areas that they would hit, and on the time that they will be hitting those particular areas, and the risk and impacts on the specific areas that they would hit, and on the time that they... So on that point, Your Honors, we emphasize and lead agencies. Technology provides is being done before the second thematic area, which is the DILG, on the preparedness aspect, where now the taken for preparedness is being done before the typhoon hits. And while we're doing that, even when the typhoon hits, third thematic area, which is the response area, which is the these are already being undertaken in preparation for the time the typhoons would hit and after, relative to in preparation for the time the typhoons would hit and after
Go ahead. To be what NDRRMC is focused on.
And children are being put to and safety of the children are being put to priority in terms of Senator, as well as the other colleagues would be to ensure on the roles of the department, Madam Chair, response of the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. It's the task of the Department of Social Welfare to deliver, and is there that the priority of the Risk Reduction and Management Council are being not only at the national level but also at the level of the internally displaced to prevent the item our preventive development agencies in this the NDRC in ensuring protection ensures that the unit so at the local females on the protection of children and women, particularly those to evacuate who have to remain are assured even in the selection of the temporary shelter sites for the meantime that they cannot return to shelter allowed to return to DP protection. This is a very important cluster in as much as we wanted to really ensure the protection being of is that of the working group on protecting forms of abuses and violence, while inside the working group on protecting children from all abilities, particularly for children, we refer are going to affect a population and hazard, particularly for hydromit will have landfall or will affect a certain area. For the department, Madam Chair, for now is really to make sure that particularly for the psychosocial processing of of children, breastfeeding, we make sure that the breastfeeding while inside the evacuation center, and we're being helped by the National Nutrition Council, who in tandem with the agencies and the departments, 9 cases of children separated their parents.
Saying, I just don't know if it covers these elements that are contained in the bill, the default, and that's also something that we're veering to the public schools.
In Hayan as well as in Ruby,
Being set up.
individual transition shelter, with
There was a more long-term to the public schools,
but
for us,
as in Ruby, evacuees from
what is the
or even the holes. Madam Chair, our initiative now is to
action centers, and when we say schools, yung total number of classrooms na talaga pong nagamit ay 18,278 classrooms, Madam Chair. Typhoon Senyang, 72 schools were used, more or less 68 classrooms, or the other way around. We're talking about 68 classrooms being used, Madam Chair. I'm sorry. Strike the 72 schools, Madam Chair, please. Ang sinasabi ko lamang po, Madam Chair, binabahagi ko lamang po ito dahil you were talking about, and we really appreciate the committee seeing that this may be a dead law if we say classrooms cannot be totally used as evacuation centers, Madam Chair.
what I'd like to know is if you have data showing all of this, but I'll put it the other way around. Have the local DRRMCs, with, of course, working with the local government units, have you asked them to provide you with a study of what structures are available within their regions, within their areas of jurisdiction, that can be used outside of classrooms? So going the other way, instead of saying let's not use the classroom. Let's find out first. Did we do that? Have we done that kind of mapping? I'm certain you have done something to that effect.
Actually, Madam Chair, that's exactly the what I meant earlier. But this is a work in progress because when the DILG, who is the lead agency in the preparedness cluster, identifies precisely those kinds of information, and then the response cluster, which is headed by the DSWD, wherein the Department of Education is a member. We are the ones discussing this and talking precisely to identify those points.
Yes, but I wasn't clear on that. If that is a pre-study being done pre-disaster as part of preparedness or on the spot. That's what I want. Like, if today I say, let's have a briefing, let's see if we're prepared for 2015, I want to be able to see that per province, per city, per municipality, this is our database of structures that can be used. In this province, there's 23 municipalities, and there is at least one multipurpose center in all but 2 of the municipalities. You know what I mean?
Yes, Your Honor. In fact, that's in the province of the DILG, Your Honor.
Yeah.
And kaakibat po nung sa pag-identify po na yan, sinasabay po natin yung areas na yun, we overlay the different multi-hazards. Because it's physically sometimes it's being identified, but on a second look, if the multi-hazard is overlaid to it, it ends up na hindi pala po pwede rito, that it falls in an area that is prone to flooding or prone to landslide.
Correct. Understand.
So it's a work in progress po. Initially, if I'm not mistaken, the DILG has the initial data on this, and that's what is being subjected to review right now, Your Honor.
Okay. Anyway, we do have a different committee that looks into all this. No, I'm just interested in it insofar as it relates to the bill and committee amendments. Well, committee input that we have to make before we finalize it. Yes, Mr. Ned Olney.
Your Honor, just a quick comment on this, because as I read the law here, and what I think is really important about it is to say that it says, up to 30 days, we don't prefer you to use the schools as evacuation centers. You may, but it says as you get to 30 days, we need to have a transparent conversation, that the LGUs should be actually looking at what other options are there. And so it doesn't say that any evacuees or IDPs need to be forcibly removed from the school at 30-day mark. I think it's to provide that guidance, a legislative guidance, and say, we've thought about it. It's not just the easiest place to put IDPs, but that we've thought about it, we've looked at the option, and it really is the only place. So we're going to keep the IDPs for another 30 days or 45 days. It allows for a transparent public conversation about where the IDPs will be placed. I think that's what's important, and to give the steer to the local authorities that schools should be used as schools and for children.
Madam Chair, with due respect. Madam Chair.
Yes.
Honorable Chairperson, ma'am, good morning, and to our authorities here present. Well, we are here to provide inputs, as the Madam Chair has mentioned, and Yusek Pam has mentioned too. Ma'am, in line with that, particularly now that Sir also has mentioned about the local authorities, ma'am, in 2011, that's joint DILG DBM circular issued in 2011, ma'am, the ERA, the Internal Revenue Allotment of the 43 2011
as long as we are able to ensure that the children and the women are really protected or insured. So, consolidate our
And let's go to Mr.
Much, Your Honor. Appreciate the opportunity to here today to speak on behalf of the bills the committee. Let me just say that there is nothing more important to save the children than children in crisis. In fact, Save the Children was formed out of mass starvation in Central Europe after World War I. And over the past 95 years, that's been a central part of our mission. I think if there's one thing that we've seen, then protecting children in crisis. In fact, Save the Children was after World War I. Our mission, wars, vulnerability of children. And if you go back and map the progress of legal protection for children, has massive tragedy. I think what we're discussing here today is based on our own experiences here in the Philippines, to the protection of colleagues around the table, extended by policy, by practice, by tremendously impressed, learned onto. Experience that we had from Typhoon Ruby, and was a lesson learned giving birth, and the birthing attendant who took one of our emergency birthing kits called a beacon box home, because she said we may face the same situation as Yolanda. And sure enough, during the middle of the night, she was called. A mother couldn't get to the health clinic. The trees were down, the wind was blowing, the electricity was out. And because this birthing attendant had the beacon box, the safe birthing kits, she was able to go to that house, give birth, survive, the child survived. So that was just a lesson that was learned from Yolanda. And I think if you look out across our agencies, there are dozens of examples. But how do we bring it together? I think, preparing well in the future, is really an example of world-class. There's no reason why the Philippines can, or other countries that have legislated state-of-the-art response. I think the bill before us today, they all propose comprehensive planning for children, improved participation, are currently being implemented. That those things be implemented tend to justify maybe a few more identifiable emergency standards for children established by law, so the effectiveness of the response, want to be involved in response, this is what happened to me. So there's really documented evidence to have children involved in preparing for emergencies. After all, who's important? No one is saying in this bill that I can tell that schools should not be used. No one is saying that IDPs must be removed, but instead it's options. The IDPs, but maybe there is not being used as a school right now is because there aren't other options, but we're working towards closely linked to the continuation of high-quality establishing schools. This bill, we have thousands of signatures of support, months approved on second reading in the House of Representatives in December. So the House can't wait, children can't wait. With you, Senator Cayetano, and the other government officials, and to move this legislation forward and to build a better and brighter future for Filipino children. So thank you very much.
The input. Marco Savio of Plan International.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Colleague and friend Ned said because we fully support the bills. Instead of repeating what he said, a bit on few points that you mentioned before, 15%. I'm sure that you might have access to those information about all the country, new constructions, which we were also told IDPs should get out of the country with long experience in the natural disasters. So we will be very happy if necessary. I found this discussion very, very interesting because highlights exactly the dynamics we see in the field, and sometimes we don't have a proper answer. So it's really necessary that the bill not only should be a framework to address the problem, but should be also a moment where all concerned organizations discuss things. Thank you very much.
Alice of World Vision.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For World Vision is a relief development and advocacy organization working closely with the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Council. And World Vision is the convener of Senator Dingona and the former Congressman Biazon. So World Vision, in terms of support, we strongly support this House bill. And as we reviewed the Senate Bill 2487 coming from Senator Ferdinand Marcos, it was highlighted the result of the mirror assessment which NED have in terms of the assessment on what we should learn from the children. And as part of learning from the children, after 3 weeks of Typhoon Yolanda, we were able to come up with have prepared, highly captured the who have lost Typhoon Haiyan issue of localized, because at the end of the day, we would like to look into what really happened. What was the response on the different issues that was presented by children? Want to into the lessons learned as well as the different models of promising practices in terms of helping the evacuation center. In fact, we started a floating evacuation center in Agusan because bill is that providing support or capacity building for children to be included in risk reduction intervention, because children have the capacity, as what has been mentioned in the risk assessment and hazard mapping, and children's participation in crafting the local DRRM plan from the sector of the children in terms of holding the rights of the children. All the things that we are doing here in the Philippines is also being discussed in the 5-point agenda, and this that the school should space for participation. And the third, the planning at the local government unit. Civil registration, this is the post of registration were lost because all the communities where they belong, it was wiped out. So I think this is for displaced children. It has been discussed already. To ensure protection of children should be mobilized to secured, and these children will be protected, because there are instances in the evacuation children that children are being abused physically, sexually, and also children are also of child trafficking. Should not be outside of the houses or temporary shelter, because it also provided an opportunity for children to be vulnerable and to be physically abused or sexually abused. Standards in terms of the housing construction as well, so that children will be protected, and support in terms of working with the technical working group, also with the for the children in the
Well, this is subject on children.
that have been working on the preparedness side.
Yes.
So we really appreciated the work that you've done. And, you know, even though you don't specialize in children, well, then this is also an eye-opener for you, I'm sure. So
Yes,
yeah.
yes,
So maybe that was why we invited.
Committee. Just a few comments. We have quite a number of disaster preparedness response programs, but I think the one is for the particular concern of the pending bills is the work disasters. We did some work with UNICEF, providing unite families that have been separated in the course of disasters. We do, every time there is a disaster, set up free calling stations in evacuation centers as a matter of course. Of course, our first priority is to restore the network service if it has been disrupted, but even if it's because we operate the satellite phone service zones even when the cellular services have been.
I may interrupt, no,
Sure.
because when you mentioned that you set up these free callings, and most of you here, they memorize their numbers or something that has to be developed, because if a lot of and something happens to their phone, then even if we now say memorize your parents' prepaid number, it might not be. I mean, and that's a big, and I mentioned this because of
Yes, ma'am.
exactly what you said. So something
On their cell phones to memorize those numbers for them. Okay, but after having said that, ma'am, we are effective as the partners that we work with, because we're not subject matter experts in this field. But what we can say is that I think there is really value in investing in efforts for data collection and information gathering. And that is what we do have, for example, mobile phone applications that information in children. For example, we have a partnership with the NDRMC and OCD. We have customized a mobile phone application called Batingao, which is now information for children and women, government as well as private agencies, because we have worked with international and local effort.
going to be issues or recommendations that come up that may not have to be in the law, but
Yeah.
Because we're all gathers, all of us.
The reason I raise that, Madam Chairman, legal clarity with respect to how those activities will be conducted, because there could be questions as to the privacy of the data. Certainly, if they violate the privacy of individuals, necessary information and give it is a worthwhile and correct aspiration. The reality is that in the vast majority, for reasons that for many of the local governments, there is no other alternative. So I think the key strategy moving forward really, and actually this was for organizations, that was and at the same time really address other programs that we promote the development of multipurpose hazard. And that's really a double challenge, Madam Chair, because our experience, it is very hard to find a hazard-free space to build a problem. But I think that's the key. If we could build throughout the country a network of evacuation centers or multipurpose centers that could function as evacuation centers. And for telcos like us, it also makes our job easier, because if we know that these are, let's say, designated evacuation areas, then we would position our facilities with respect to this so that we could provide the kind of service that would be needed in those kinds of emergency situations. Yun lang po, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
That was a very interesting point that you made. Just to mention that it may not really be the primary committee to look into it. It's a side concern that we have, because it is one of the protecting children, or to have safe evacuation centers. But as a policy, it's interesting to note that sometime in I was elected in 2004. Around that time, DBM actually banned multipurpose centers. I remember that because I am a supporter of. That's where you also have your social and cultural activities. But at that time, DBM, this was for the use of our PDAF. That's just an FYI because it was interesting that I was saying, and then eventually I think it was put back because it put, you can really put this kaya nga multi-purpose, no? It is really, I felt that it would really be it might even be essential now with all these calamities and one of its primary.
Just to add to that, ma'am, one of the designs, for example, for such a multi-purpose.
The children would be in the schools, and I wanted to say are affected by curse. Hear from them directly how they're
being well, with respect to the creation of multi-purpose centers, Madam Chair, that may be converted into a very, very good proposal, Madam Chair.
It gives you so many ideas about, all related topics that I could file another bill on a slightly new.
Thank you. Because of that provision, ma'am, in the 2011 circular, telling that
They confirmed, but they did not.
yes, ma'am, because ma'am, they have the local development.
Okay.
20%
Has been how it has been utilized.
Ma'am, thank you, ma'am, for mentioning. We will.
If it's possible, leave those position papers in a week and a half, only because I'd like to have another hearing in 2 weeks. It helps us in these issues. We move forward right away. So those will help us prepare for and ideally not the day before because it's all overnight. I want to read it myself. It's not as good. Tightening it, agency involved. That's the only reason I foresee that it may require more than WG. And that's where position paper.
Context of the sunset review for the Republic Act 10121, which becomes the